Welcome back to Black Movie Recaps. Today I'm going to show you a romantic comedy drama film from 2014 titled Black Coffee. This is a spoiler content. Watch out and take care. The movie begins with a man named Robert sleeping on the bed with his girlfriend Mita as an alarm goes off. Robert wakes up and starts getting ready for work as he makes breakfast for himself and seen leaving money on the counter. From the kitchen, he tells Mita he's leaving for work and she asks for a kiss before he leaves. Mita asks if he left the money and he says yes he did, reminding Mita not to spend all this time around. They say their goodbyes and Robert leaves sleeping Mita in bed. Robert goes to work and starts going about his business when he's greeted by another colleague who tells him the boss wants to see him in his office. Robert walks into Nate's office and realized he's talking to someone making a promise to the person. Robert waits and when Nate's done, Robert tells him it sounds like a woman on the other end of that phone but Nate tells him it's nothing. Nate fires Robert who initially thinks he is joking but Nate tells him he's been serious. Robert works at a painting company established by his father, but there were some business dealings that left the company in Nate's hands, so Robert is now essentially an employee. Robert couldn't run the company and had to sell to Nate who saved the company from bankruptcy. Nate gives him no reason for firing him and the scene plays out in a long awkward fashion with Robert eventually storming out of the office. Robert goes to his friend Duke's bookshop to blow off the steam and look at his legal rights thinking of suing Nate when a woman comes in and buys a book. Robert admires her beauty and the scene moves to Robert coming home to find that her sweet yet money-hungry girlfriend he just left in bed, is packing up her car and moving out. She flashes her empty ring finger up at him, shrieking at the top of her lungs about how it's been 2 years now and where's her ring? She tells Robert he can no longer afford to take care of her as Nate already told her Robert was fired. She asked for a kiss before she leaves and Nate tells her to get her crazy self out of his property. Robert has a sidekick, a cousin named Julian, who is seen helping Robert pack up the remaining of Mita's stuff as he tells him he saw this coming. Julian says Mita and Nate have always been the shadiest people in his life. He sees some clothes of Mita that he likes and tells Robert he'll take them to the cleaners and let them box it up, giving them to his girlfriend as new presents from him. Robert tells him he can take whatever he wants because he paid for everything Julian sees. Julian has a strangely lucrative business selling coffee to local businesses and asked Robert to help him distribute some of them since he's now unemployed. Robert downplays the offer telling Julian he can't be wearing a three-piece suit because real men wear boots. Julian then asks him for a favor to deliver to a client who just started her law firm and buys coffee every Monday. Robert asks why he can't do it himself and Julian tells him he's out of town for a conference, which makes Robert agree as he's got nothing up his plate at the moment. Robert is seen working on his property when Julian arrives to give him the package and the address reminding him to be punctual. Robert is walking into Duke's bookshop when she meets the woman she saw earlier walk out as he opens the door. She thanks him and Robert responds admiring her beauty once again. Robert asks Duke who she is and Duke tells him he doesn't know for sure but reading from the books she buys she's an attorney. He tells Robert she's probably not in her league using her car as reference. Robert tells him there are sisters riding around like that with negative bank accounts like his ex. Duke asks since when and he tells him since Nate fired him. Duke tells Robert he knew something wasn't right when he saw Nate and Mita this morning breaking bread. Robert heads straight to Nate's but he's stopped by two of his former colleagues and asked if they knew and they tell him everyone there knew. Mita walks in and asks them to get Robert out of the place as Nate also walks in. Robert asks him how long he was messing with his woman behind his back. Mita tells Nate not to answer, telling Nate he gave Robert so many signs. Robert storms out telling them they deserve each other. Robert goes to deliver the coffee and realized she looks familiar. They both remembered they met at Duke's shop and she introduces herself as Morgan. Morgan apologizes for the mess and tells Robert she just moved in so she's still getting things in order. Robert offered to do the painting job but Morgan is hesitant doing business with her own folk as she's heard a lot of bad experiences. Robert tells her that's a myth, telling her statistics show black people are more satisfied when they do business with other black people. He gives Morgan his card and tells her he'll give her the 10% Pretty Woman discount when she calls. Robert goes to visit Julian and sees him selling in front of his apartment complex. Robert asks which person does that and Julian replies, a man who just made $50K last month. Julian lectures Robert on how he needs to leave the plantation of white-owned businesses and start up his own. The conversation shifts to Morgan and Julian tells Robert Morgan wants a man that's like-minded and thinks like her. As they talk, Robert gets a call from Morgan to come and give her an estimate for the painting and he leaves immediately. The scene moves to Morgan receiving mails from his ex-husband, Hill, who doesn't seem to like the idea of Morgan starting her own firm. He seems to belittle what she has achieved but Morgan doesn't pay attention to that. He asks Morgan to go to dinner with him and she seems confused. He's the ex-husband after all and she's already exhausted from their back and forth relationship. But she eventually gives in after Hill tells her he wants them to be together again. Robert went with a coffee in his hand as a present. He decides to take the opportunity to not only offer his services to paint her new office but also hit on her. Robert asks if they can discuss the pricing over dinner and Morgan tells him they should keep things professional. He gave Morgan the estimate which was too low, so she asked if it was because he was hitting on her and Robert confirmed that's the reason. She refused and asked for the full estimate, which Robert gives, and to Morgan's surprise, it is quite a lot, so they agree on a payment plan. Robert is seen working one Sunday when Morgan walks in drinking coffee, and offers him some of the coffee. Robert takes a sip and tells Morgan he needs to return to work, thinking she came there just to make sure he's working. But in reality, she came there just to get some company and talk to someone. Robert asks if she wants to help with the painting and Morgan asks if that, in turn, gives her a discount, but Robert tells her he offered a 50%, "Let me take you to lunch," and a 10% pretty lady discount, but she threw them in his face, so it's too late for discounts. Robert returns to his work and they start talking. Morgan asks why black people keep talking at work and Robert tells her that's another myth, as everyone talks at work regardless of race. Morgan ordered Chinese food and they start to get to know each other a little as they eat. Robert wanted to get back to work, although Morgan asks for them to talk more, but Robert insists he has to return to work. Before he left, Morgan asked him why he's interested in her and Robert tells her because he would be a fool not to. Robert finishes with his work and is seen packing his tools. Morgan walks to him and tells Robert she has to leave, but Robert uses the opportunity to ask her for dinner by pulling the "let me cook for you" trick on her. Morgan eventually accepts his dinner invitation and insists that it is not a date but just dinner. Yet she shows up at his house in a skin-tight purple mini dress, heavy on the cleavage. Morgan enjoys the meal and gives him the compliment as they get to know each other further. Robert tries to push his like once again, but Morgan tells him there's an ex-husband and they're trying to work things out for the past 6 months. Robert tells Morgan he thinks he better put his brakes on this, but Morgan tells him she really doesn't want him to. She doesn't love Hill, but she realized she rather admired his accomplishments as he reminded her of his father. Robert decides to change the topic and offered her wine as they talk more out at the deck. Morgan and Robert begin a tentative romance, where all they do is talk about what a real man is like, and what a real woman needs. They discuss the meaning of the word soulmate with no irony. Morgan asks Robert if he is a man of God, clearly important to her, and she tells him that she thinks a woman's real role is to be her man's helpmeet. Never mind that she has the gumption and smarts and bravery to go to law school, work as an attorney in a cutthroat business, and then actually set up shop for herself. All of that doesn't hold a candle to being a helpmeet, apparently. Naturally, though, her words inspires Robert to start thinking about opening up his own painting business, so that he can be the real man that she needs him to be. Robert agreed to take a step and asks Morgan to recommend some books on business. Robert walks Morgan to her car and they agreed to do this again tomorrow, as they call tomorrow their official date. Morgan goes to work all smiling and sees Hill is in her office. The plot gets extremely convoluted, involving Hill, whose behavior borders on stalker harassment. Roberts gets to work and tries to remind Morgan of their dinner date, but Hill interrupts and offers him a blank check to write any amount he likes, telling Robert his services are no longer needed. Robert thanked Morgan, and as he leaves, Hill tells Morgan that if he sees that clown here again, he's going to fight Morgan with everything he has before signing off the properties. Hill has been shown to be a bully and a control freak, who treats Morgan as his property even though they are divorced, and nothing has been set up properly for him to have any emotional resonance. Robert goes to talk to Julian about the situation and he tells Robert to make Morgan admire him by starting his own business. He has enough savings and more money inherited from his father sitting in the bank. The scene moves to Nate and Mita as Mita asks for more money after spending $5,000 last week. Nate is hesitant initially, as their relationship is getting too expensive, but he ends up giving in. He's thinking about his situation and Robert walks in to get his check. As he leaves, Nate apologized about Mita and offered Mita back to Robert, but he declines. He even offers to give him back to company, but he still declines and walks out. Robert goes to Duke and asks where his business section is and headed there to get some books. Morgan walks in to get her order. Duke tries to stall her without making it obvious and get Robert the opportunity to come meet her, but he couldn't hold her for long and Morgan eventually leaves. Robert comes, but it's late, so he pays for his books and leaves. Robert is seen reading at the deck and hears Morgan knocking on his door. He invites her in and apologized for not doing anything when he'll talk to him anyhow. Robert tells her he's not mad, as he tells him what's meant to be will be. Morgan tells Robert she wants to be meant for him but needs time to sort out her divorce. She was emotionally drained during the divorce to the extent that she gave up and relinquished everything to Hill. Hill promised to sign over the properties back to her, but he's been holding that against her. Robert tells her to do whatever she got to do, repeating that if it's meant to be, it'll be. Saying maybe God will send what's meant for him through that door, and immediately Mita walks in telling Robert Nate broke up with her. Robert tells Morgan this is not from God and clearly a sign from the devil. Mita tells him she wants them to get back and Morgan offers to leave. Robert tells her she doesn't have to leave, but Morgan assures him it's alright, he should rather sort things out with Mita and call him later in the evening. Whilst Robert and Mita talks, Julian walks in and drags her out of Robert's place. Robert goes to see Morgan at her office and they kiss for the first time. Morgan tells him she's ready to forego her $2.3 million worth of properties, including a generational inheritance she promised her dad not to let go, for them to begin their relationship. Robert tells her he doesn't want her to, as most people make irrational decisions at the beginning of their relationships, and end up regretting later, and doesn't want her to resent him later for that. Robert gets an idea and tells Morgan he'll handle it as he walks out hurriedly. Robert and Duke rather set Hill and Mita up on a blind date as Duke hand Hill 2 movie tickets and they agree to go. Mita snatches them from Hill and he quickly takes them back, telling Mita never to snatch anything from him, and she apologized. Morgan and Robert are seen talking about Robert's business. The film gives Hill and his new love a long montage of the two of them frolicking on a swing set in the golden sunset light. The two villains look happy as they enjoy swinging on the swings, laughing and kissing. Hill is even seen opening the door for Mita as they go to have lunch. They seem to be happy with each other's company. Robert asks Morgan to marry him and she agrees. Robert is now a businessman wearing his 3-piece suit as he goes to Julian to thank him for everything. He and Morgan are opening a third store and they want his coffee to be the official brand there, taking us back to what started their journey in the first place, black coffee. Robert and Morgan are seen going to the bookshop where they bump into Mita and Hill. Morgan thanks Hill for signing the divorce papers and Hill thanks them for setting him up with Mita. Robert invites them to dinner and they agree. In the closing scene, they're seen as one big happy family as they toast to their individual success. The agenda here, outside of the positive idea that African Americans need to be employers not employees, is a confused one and seems to be, men need to be strong and take charge or women will not love them. But men also need to be vulnerable enough to work to better themselves so that their woman can have the glorious godly opportunity to be a helpmeet to them. Mita is set up as a reprehensible character, a sneering gold-digging nightmare, and yet when a man finally bosses her around, she melts like ice cream on a summer day. Charming. Robert, under Morgan's supportive influence, starts reading books on business ownership, all as she looks on with loving eyes. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like. It really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.